Sufis. The epistles of the Brethren of Sincerity, which contributed to the popularization of Neoplatonism in the Arabic world, had a great influence on Islamic mysticism and philosophy. The Sabians, acting as translators and astrologers, were responsible for infecting the Islamic world with the occult tradition of philosophy and of contributing to the formation of a mystical version of Islam, known as Sufism. The word Sufism is generally agreed to come from the word Suf, referring to the rough woolen garment that the early Sufis wore to demonstrate their ascetic renunciation of worldly desires. Contrary to the claims of the Sufis, asceticism is denounced in the Quran, and has its origins outside of Islam in practices that are common throughout the world. It is found, for instance, in Merkaba mysticism, the monks of Christianity, the lamas of Buddhism, and the fakirs of Hinduism. Islam, however, aimed to correct these inclinations. A well-known saying of the Prophet Muhammad is, "There is no monasticism asceticism in Islam." Of the Christians, the Quran says, "But the asceticism which they invented for themselves, God did not prescribe for them, we commanded only the seeking for the good pleasure of God." 22. It is generally accepted that the first exponent of Sufi doctrine was the Egyptian or Nubian, Dunnun, of the 9th century AD, whose teaching was recorded and systematized by Al-Junayd. The doctrines expressed by Al-Junayd were then boldly preached by his pupil, Ash-Shibli of Khorasan in the 10th century. A fellow student of Ash-Shibli was Al-Husayn ibn Mansur al-Hallaj, c. 858 to 922 AD, whose thought demonstrated some clearly heretical elements, such as reincarnation, incarnation, and so on. He was ultimately put to death by the son of Saladin, the great Muslim leader who recaptured Palestine from the Crusaders, for declaring "I am the truth," identifying himself with God. However, later Sufi writers nevertheless regard him as a saint and martyr, who suffered because he disclosed the great secret of the mystical union of man and God. To the Sufis, mystical union is known as Hulul, or the incarnation of God in the human body. While Tawhid, the oneness of God, typically refers to the monotheistic creed of Islam, for the Sufis it refers to this mystical union with God. According to Al-Hallaj, for example, man is essentially divine because he was created by God in his own image, and that is why he claimed that in the Quran God commands the angels to bow down in worship to Adam. As de Lacy O'Leary described, in Arabic thought and its place in history. This is an extremely interesting illustration of the fusion of Oriental and Hellenistic elements in Sufism, and shows that the theoretical doctrines of Sufism, whatever they may have borrowed from Persia and India, receive their interpretative hypotheses from Neoplatonism. It is interesting also as showing in the person of Al-Hallaj a meeting point between the Sufi and the philosopher of the Ismailian school. 23. Sufism is considered a branch of mysticism, the basis of which is considered by scholars to be union between the mystic and God. Therefore, similar to the mysticism of other religions, the experiences of the Sufis usually involve trance states, visions, and other such psycho-spiritual experiences. According to the eminent Muslim historian Ibn Khaldun, the path of the Sufis comprised two directions. The first was founded in the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad, while the other was corrupted with heretical innovations. Among the deviations addressed by Ibn Khaldun were the beliefs in a Mahdi, whose themes he attributed to Shia influence, the existence of the pole, Qutb, and other members of the spiritual hierarchy, the extravagant theosophical speculations, including magic, astrology and sorcery, and pretensions of predicting the future and purported miracles worked by saints and holy men. Lastly, Ibn Khaldun denounced the otherworldliness of Sufi aspirations, which he regarded as a departure from addressing the pressing needs of the here and now exemplified by the earliest generations of Muslims. James Morris explains that Ibn Khaldun was concerned with the much more and down-to-earth consequences of diverting substantial societal and human resources to the pointless, imaginary distractions and pastimes of such large groups of simpletons, and the perhaps even more debilitating long-range consequences of their attempting to lead a moral and religious life somehow separate from what they allegedly viewed as the corrupting sphere of political and military power and authority. 24. Sufi practices are merely attempts to attain psychic states for their own sake, though it is claimed the pursuit represents seeking closeness to God, and that the achieved magical powers are gifts of advanced spirituality. For several reasons, Sufism was generally looked upon as heretical among Muslim scholars. Among the deviations introduced by the Sufis was the tendency to believe the daily prayers to be only for the masses who had not achieved deeper spiritual knowledge, but could be disregarded by those more advanced spiritually. The Sufis introduced the practice of dhikr, or religious oral exercises, consisting of a continuous repetition of the name of God. These practices were unknown to early Islam, and consequently regarded as bid'ah, meaning unfounded innovation. Also, many of the Sufis adopted the practice of tawakkul, or complete trust or dependence on God, by avoiding all kinds of labor or commerce, refusing medical care when they were ill, and living by begging. A Sufi teacher called a sheikh was often elevated to the rank of saint, known in Islam as a wali, or friend of God. A wali is one regarded as enjoying God's special favor and blessed with the capacity to perform miracles. Called karamat, they are considered lower in rank than those performed by the prophets. As described by the well-known scholar of mysticism in Islam, Anne-Marie Schimmel, the cult of saints is permeated with pre-Islamic ideas. Ancient local deities survived as saints whose actual names are sometimes unknown and whose tombs are surrounded by legends. Likewise, in India ancient Hindu sanctuaries have been transformed into Muslim shrines. As in Christian saint worship, many saints specialize in curing specific ailments or help in particular cases, such as infertility, illness, and madness. As Schimmel points out, many customs that are practiced near saints' tombs border on magic, and it is indeed one of the sheikh's duties to produce amulets of all sorts. One has amulets. Incidentally, our word amulet is derived from the Arabic hama'il, for this or that illness, problems during pregnancy and delivery, danger of fire or theft, and so on. 25.